welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. And with me today is the beautiful, lovely speaker, author, friend extraordinaire, Cheri Swalwell. How are you today, Cheri?
I am doing great, Kara. How are you doing?
It is exciting to be in February, right?
It is.
I like some people. I know a lot of people don't like winter, but I'm okay with it actually. What I don't like is icy weather, but the cold weather, the snowy weather, the frosty weather, I'm okay with. I don't like driving in it, but I'm okay with it. So, and I love that about February. It's not quite as Arctic as December and January can be. It's kind of like a more, well, I'm in the Midwest, so I can only speak for the Midwest. I don't know how it is I don't know how it is up north. I mean, it can be completely different from what I understand, and down south and, and on the coastline. So I can only speak for the Midwest. So I'm like you say, Cheri, blessed to be alive.
Absolutely. Well, and, February, too, kind of marks for me with that whole winter thing that March is around the corner. And while we still get snow sometimes in March and even sometimes in April, the birds start to sing, and so it doesn't seem quite so chilly. So it seems much more bearable.
You have hope of a warmer future on the horizon, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's really kind of funny. It really is. It's because in November and December, you still have at least a month, maybe two, possibly three more of cold wintry weather.
Exactly.
But by the time February comes around, you can see the end of the rainbow, right? At least for most people.
Exactly.
Well, welcome everyone to the Cheer Up Podcast, and we're going to continue this month's topic on love. And if you missed the first week of February, we talked about agape love. Last week, we talked about eros, or an erotic type of love within a marriage. And this week, we're going to be talking about another type of love. But if you missed those two previous podcasts and you want to know more about agape love, that unconditional, that perfect love, that God has done for us himself, then definitely go back and listen to the previous episodes. If you want to know more about the erotic, passionate, sexual, intimate type of love, then go back and listen to last week's podcast. Again, for those who don't know where to find us, we can be found anywhere where podcasts can be streamed and or heard, whether it's you can stream us on Roku, Downcast, or Chromecast devices. We're also on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Podchaser, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Castbox, Overcast, Podcasters, and I think it's another one. So anywhere you can listen to any type of podcast or stream different types of podcasts, we're there. We're also on social media. You can listen to some of our audio clips on Rumble. You can follow us on Instagram at Cheer Up Podcast. We're on Twitter at Cheer Podcast, and we're also on Facebook. And if you'd like to join our little community of Cheer Up Podcasters or Cheer Up Podcast people, I should say, then just send us requests to join, and we welcome you, and we look forward to having you. So that is what we're talking about today. We're continuing the conversation on love, Love. And today we're going to be talking about Storge love or Storge love, which is another Greek word for love, and it talks about the love of parents for children. Now, apparently, according to my Greek lexicon, it is a shortened version of the word Storgos. Okay? So I think I'm pronouncing that right. They broke it down for me. I think it's Storgos is what it is. And so I guess that would be more of like a Storgos type of love for parents and children. And it's like a mutual love of parents and children and wives and husbands, loving affection, prone to loving tenderly, chiefly in a reciprocal tenderness of parents and children. In the King James Version, it looked like it can be found in Romans as one of the scriptures that talks about um, storgus or storga type of love. And Romans 12:10, be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. And I just want to read that again. It's Romans 12:10. That was the King James Version. And it says, be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. And that brotherly love, that type of love that's described there is, the type of love that is the type of love that we described earlier, that tender, loving, that type of love, especially though to like a parent and a child. What do you think, Cheri?
I agree. I agree a lot. God is the biggest example of unconditional love. And I know me as a parent, I fall short so many times. Like I go into it with the best intentions, but then I just fall so short. So I'm glad that we don't have to have that perfect love. I think as parents, because we fall short, it's important for us to always point our kids back to the one who will never fail them. While we don't try to fail, we will fail.
Absolutely.
But he never will fail, ever. And even in our failings, I think that we can still build and create that bond and that love with our children and between us and our parents. And there's just nothing like the love of family. Like Nyla was talking about a couple weeks ago, when she thinks of celebrating, her first thought is she wants to do it with family. Otherwise, it's not really celebrating. God put us in a family for a reason. And I know I myself, I'm very family oriented as well. I love having family around me. I love being a wife. I love being a mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a cousin. There's just nothing like it. Like I love that example that God gave us.
And what a perfect example that he has given us, It is just, I don't know, it's just like, a different type of love. And, families describe a particular type of love differently, like for instance, you hear boys or even men, say that they're definitely mama's boys, and you hear girls say they grew up being a daddy's girl. That's that parental type of love. You know what I'm saying? It's like that parental type of love to where you give on, you just love on that person today. You feel so special to them that, you just feel that initial connection to them. And I think it's also where I don't think it comes from the term like mama bear. You know how mama bear can be so protective over her kids. And that's different. Of course, that's referring to the actual bear and the cub and how she comes out of, she doesn't want anyone hurting her kids. It just brings out a different side of them. They no longer just a nice little cuddly grizzly, but they become more grizzly-like instead of cuddly-like, and that's because of that type of love that we have for, our kids and everything. And so it's like a special type of love, a love that only a mom could have for their child, that a dad could have for their child. Don't you agree, Cheri?
Oh, I do. And it's funny that you brought up the whole mama bear thing because in 2021, I bought a mug that said Mama Bear, I bought a hat that said Mama Bear, and I bought a shirt that said Mama Bear. And it was really significant for me to do it and I had a reason behind it. It wasn't just that I thought it was cool, although I do think it's cool, but I've always called myself a Mama Bear, but I want to preface that or explain it a little bit. Last year, 2021, I had a full-fledged adult as a child. I had a transitioning into adult as a child, and I had a child still at home as a child. And I needed the reminder for myself. I needed to remember that God has equipped my children to take take care of themselves, to depend on him first and foremost. That's my main role as a mom, is to teach them to rely on him. And so that when they do leave the nest permanently, that they're relying on God instead of relying on their dad and me. Although the whole mama bear thing, and the reason why I bought that, was because I always wanted them to know that they still always had a mama bear waiting, that if they needed help, I would step in and I would show my claws if necessary. I've always been the type of mom, though, where I try to be hands-off as much as possible. I try to let my kids handle their own issues, but when it gets to be too difficult, or when they do need that parental figure to stand in or to step up, then I'll come along. And it's funny because just last week, I was talking to one of our kids, and something had happened. And so I said to them, I said, do you need me to take over? Because that's not fair. I can help you with this. And the response was, no, I'm going to take care of it, or I'm going to try it on my own. But if I don't get anywhere, then yeah, you can take over. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. And I found out that person this happened last night, and they haven't come home yet today, but I did see that they were able to take care of it themselves, and I'm not going to be needed after all. And I like that. Like, I like the fact that our kids know that mom will show up and will step up if she needs to. But I also like the fact that they're learning that they can be independent and that they can take care of and fight some of their own battles. Because while I'll always be around, I won't always be around. There will be times when they need to do it themselves. And that's kind of our job, is to teach them how to do it themselves. The other thing I wanted to talk about, too, about the whole parent-to-child Storge love, is while some families are really close and they just exhibit that love to the nth degree, and they're the poster children for healthy families. Families sometimes are some of the areas in the even in a great healthy relationship, families still can have tensions. They still can have problems, because we're all imperfect people trying to live in an imperfect world and trying to love in an imperfect world. So I don't think that there's any poster child family that's completely perfect, that doesn't have any issues. And the issues, I don't think it's the issues that's the problem. It's how you handle the issues. It's how you work through the issues. Because people who say they don't have issues probably are lying, because everybody has issues. Like, that's just part of living in a sinful world.
And I agree. And I don't think there's no, I think poster child, poster family is probably the correct term, because it's just a poster. It's not reality. It's just a snapshot in time, of something that you just happen to catch them at a great moment or a great pose or something like that. But you're right. Every family, every person deals with their own different issues. I don't necessarily like the word issue, but everyone deals with their own type of things, right? Now, how severe they are, how debilitating they are, if they're a big problem or a little problem, again, like you say, depends on how you handle it, and everything. So it's not, that way. And I know that there are parents out there that are probably struggling with their kids, with their teenagers, or even adult children, that they're struggling with them, and or the choices they make and or didn't make, so there's always those things. But and that's just a perfect way to loop back to what you were talking about when you were talking about Mama Bear. Because I think a lot of times, of course, when you see like a mama bear on video, you go near her cub and she doesn't know you. For all she knows, you're intending to do that cub harm, and you see them physically chase that person away. But just remember, as moms, and a mama bear can also be a mama bear in the spiritual world for our kids.
Oh, I love that image. Now
yes,
I know why I bought the mug and the hat and the shirt.
Yeah, see?
You need to explain it to me.
You didn't know. See there? Yeah. Isn't it awesome how God works? We may not be physically chasing chasing away the boogie bears and, the boogeyman or shadows in the night. But maybe we are, okay? Maybe we are. Maybe while we're on our knees, maybe while we're deep in prayer for that child and or their situation and circumstance, maybe we are chasing away the quote-unquote boogeyman. Maybe we are chasing away those dark shadows that's trying to overtake them and overcome them and get them to make all sorts of dark decisions regarding their lives. We are doing that. We may not physically be, have the boxing gloves on and, ready to take someone out for touching our child, but we are spiritually in battle for them, a spiritual mama bear. So that when the enemy even thinks about coming their way, they're like, oh, my goodness, I really want to try to attack that child, but there's that mama.
Exactly.
Getting past her and her prayer work, and her praying and the angels and all this stuff, everything else she's calling down from heaven, that's going to be a task. Maybe we should go somewhere else, do something else. Maybe we should abandon this idea.
Right. And when we add to that the armor of God, then he doesn't have a choice. It's funny
he doesn't have a choice.
Because I've been teaching our youngest how to pray, to put on the armor of God every day. And I pray and put the armor on myself. My husband and I pray together and we put it on each other. And it just makes a big, big difference. And I also pray this one prayer every day, and it's a ritual, but it's not. To me, it's being that mama bear, and it's protecting and asking God for his protection. And I will pray every day, sometimes multiple times a day, because I pray it when I get in the car, so it depends on how often I'm driving that day. I pray it before we get out of bed. I pray it every time we get into the car, and I pray it just at other intervals when God prompts me to. But I pray for God to put his hand of protection and Jesus's blood around our entire family, front to back, side to side, top to bottom, and bring us all home safely together tonight. And for me, that's just surrounding our children, surrounding our family, not just my husband and myself, but our whole entire family, our extended family too. And it's asking God to bring us all home safely. And I have to tell you, Kara, there have been more times in the last couple of years when I've started praying that regularly every day, that God has shown me, he has opened my eyes to see ways that he has protected us. It kept us from accidents, kept us from car accidents, kept us from accidents on vacation, kept us from what could have been potentially fatal instances. Right. And he's opened our eyes and let us see how he's protected us. I know that he protects us all the time, and I know that there's 1,000 times that he's protected us without us even knowing. But yeah, he has opened our eyes and let us see in this past year, and it never fails to humble me and to fall on my knees, just so grateful that he's willing to do that for us.
I know, right? And basically, he's our daddy bear.
Exactly.
So to speak, he's like, when the enemy tries to come at us and everything else, God's like, give it to me. Give it to me. I got this.
Exactly.
But sometimes we want to put on the boxing gloves ourselves and be like, that's okay, God. That's okay. I can handle this. I can handle this. And then we end up all bloody and bruised with a broken nose and a couple of teeth knocked out. Yeah. And everything else because we try to handle it on our own. And we got the what beat out of us. We look like blooming idiots thinking that we could take on something when God's like, you probably don't want to do that without my help. Oh, that's okay, God, I got it, and you're posturing and maneuvering and you're doing a right jab here and then a left one there and, doing a fancy footwork, and you still end up on the mat out for the count.
Absolutely.
And you have all the injuries and wounds and cuts and bleeding and bruises to prove that you were in a fight that you were not prepared for, that you weren't even supposed to be in. But now look at you. See, go ahead. Yeah, it's like, and now look at you. You're sitting there, and your enemy is just sitting there just laughing like, oh, that was easy. Like that really wasn't even much of a fight, But if we just don't fight that fight. If we go to God first and we ask him to do it for us and to give us the strength to do it, you know, he will do that. He will absolutely do that for us. So you made a great point, Cheri.
Well, I was just piggybacking off of what you were saying. Like, I love love. We've talked about that. I probably am annoying everybody by saying that again, but it's just so neat to just break it down into the very different kinds of love there are. And I'm so grateful that God is our Heavenly Father and that he is the best example of unconditional love. And I'm also so grateful that I'm allowed to give myself grace and I don't have to measure up to his perfect unconditional love, that I can love my children and love my parents and love my family members in my broken, messy, very imperfect kind of love. A love that I still strive to do my best, but where I need a lot of grace every day. And I think if we can if we can approach our family members, if we can approach our relationships with that kind of an attitude, the heaven versus the earthly person, they hurt my feelings. I'm not getting what I need to out of this. I can't believe that you did such and such, or, you know that I hate X, Y, and Z, and yet you did it anyway. If we can instead look at it from the perspective of, this person loves me, they had the best intentions, they tried their hardest. Did they hit the mark? Not necessarily, but you know what? That's where grace comes. That's where grace is involved. And if we can approach family that way, I think we all would be more satisfied. And if we can approach community, if we can approach life, if we can approach society with they have our best intentions. And I know that not everybody does. And so you still have to be, just like the Bible says, there's that verse about being as wise as a serpent and as innocent as a dove. I think that definitely plays in, that you can't just expect everybody to love you the way family does. And there are family members out there. There is family that is unhealthy and dysfunctional and unsafe and toxic. And so you need to be very discerning, and you need to talk to God about that, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the best thing that you can do for yourself is to walk away and be healed. So I'm not talking about those kinds of relationships with family. I'm talking about the normal, everyday, healthy, but imperfect family relationships. And for those, if we can approach it from the aspect of, they have my best intentions at heart, I have their best intentions at heart, and we can love each other from that imperfect, messy position, I think that all of us will benefit from that. And I think that would please God too. But if you are if you are in a dysfunctional relationship, if your family life is dysfunctional, then please get the professional help that you need. I am not advocating for staying in a relationship with a parent, with a spouse, even sometimes with your children, with your grown children. If it's unhealthy, if it's unsafe, if it's toxic, go to God, seek godly counsel, and find out what it is you need to do to protect yourself. But I'm just talking about in the normal nitty gritty. Take it from that perspective of good intentions. Everyone has good intentions, and it's coming from. Go ahead.
Oh, well, it's coming from like one of the definitions in the lexicon is saying you're cherishing one's kindred, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. We may not always like them, we may not always trust them, and some of them we do have to walk away from, but you're cherishing them as your kindred, and some you may have to walk away from permanently, but you're still cherishing them and the person that God created them to be, not who they turned into.
Agreed.
But the person that God created them to be. Okay, they were supposed to be your mother. They were supposed to be the one that raised you in an appropriate way. Your dad was one who was supposed to be there. He was supposed to protect you. Your mom was supposed to nurture you. Your dad was supposed to make sure that you were secure. Your mom was supposed, she was going to do her best to raise you. And together, the two, this is what was supposed to happen. But it didn't. Let's say that. But you cherish them for who God created them to be. not for who they turned out to be. So it's not like you're saying I'm cherishing the crummy childhood that I had, and neither of my parents were there. Half the time they didn't even know I existed. No, that's not what we're talking. That's not what this type of Storge love is talking about. It's talking about that love between parents and children and everything else. And then, Cheri, I don't know about you, but I have seen and or read or have witnessed or situations to where kids have been horribly treated. Horribly. Well, they were horribly treated in horrible ways when they were a kid. But they're adults now. And they still love that parent.
Mm-hmm.
They still have a love and a cherish for their parent. It doesn't say that they agreed with what they did. It doesn't mean any of that. But even when it makes no worldly sense whatsoever, for them to still want this parent, to be a part of their life, to still even love this parent, they do. And actually, I think that's exactly what this type of love is talking about. It's exactly what it's talking about. It's not saying that they, now when they were kids, this would have happened when they were kids, and possibly they mended fences, and maybe they haven't. But they either still seek that type of love from their parent, that type of acceptance, or the parent is seeking it from them. So it exists whether we want to acknowledge it or not.
Well, and that totally fits right in with the last point that I wanted to make. And that is, people might get mad at me for what I'm going to say, but it's very biblically correct and biblically sound. God gives us two instructions. So if you came from a dysfunctional home, and if you came from a home that was unhealthy, you are instructed to forgive the other person, regardless of whether they've changed, regardless of whether they've apologized, regardless of any of that. Our instruction from God is, as we have been forgiven, we too must forgive. So that's number one. And yes, it's very hard. And Kara, I think we should have a whole episode about forgiveness and what it really means to biblically forgive, what biblical forgiveness looks like in the future.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Number two, God also instructs us to bless them. So blessing them can be as simple as not talking about them behind their back, not venting to every Tom, Dick, or Harry that you come across. Your prayer partner, yes, that's sharing, that's asking for prayer, that's helping the healing process. But even in that healing process, we are instructed to bless them. God does not want us to harbor unforgiveness, to grow bitterness, to grow weeds of anger and discontentment. And I think the majority of the reason for that is, one, he loves everybody, but two, he loves us so much, he knows what bitterness, anger, and discontentment can do. And it will kill us literally from the inside out. And he loves us too much for that. So families can be the best thing in the world. Families can be the biggest heartache in the world. But God's definition, the biblical definition of family, is a loving, healthy environment. And we've talked about heaven. We were talking about heaven with Nyla during the celebration party. And you know what? Regardless of what your relationship was like with your family here on earth, if both of you are born-again believers, if both of you are sons and or daughters of the King, when you get up to heaven, you will be with your family member, and it will be the biblical version. I'm not saying that they'll still have that role of family up there, but you will know them as, this was my mom, this was my grandmother, this was my aunt, this was my uncle. You will have that biblical family that God desired you to have here on earth. Even if you never had it on earth, if you have it, you would have it up in heaven if both of you are believers. And that right there is amazing. Like, that's just one more element of God's unconditional love for us, that he wanted us to have and experience that. And while we might not have gotten it on earth, if both of us become born again believers, we will have it up in heaven. And God, I think too, he brings us people into our life that are just like sisters, that are just like mothers, that are just like aunts. Even if they're not biologically ours, God brings us people like that, spiritual family, because he loves us so much. So if you don't have that biological mother that you always wanted, if you don't have that biological father, then pray and ask God not only to fill it himself, to fill that gap and that hole himself in you, but ask him to bring somebody with flesh and bones, skin and bones, to be that person for you here on earth. Because he loves us so much that I know he would do it. Just like he gave me a prayer partner when I asked, he'll give us relationships and family members who aren't blood, but are thicker than blood. Any last comments, Kara?
No, I actually think you ended it perfectly.
Well, John 16:33 reminds us once again that these things I have spoken to you, in me you will have peace, or you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, because I, Jesus, has overcome the world. Do you need prayer or encouragement? Did today's episode fill you with joy, or did it make you feel sad? Speak to us. Reach out to us, write to us, email us at cheeruppodcast@gmail.com, or head over to the Facebook group if you need a spiritual family. Cheer Up Podcast on Facebook. And we would love to connect you with other people. We would love for you to start building community on there and just feeling like you belong, because you do. Head over to Kara's website, KaraRHunt.com. CheriSwalwell.com if you want to see what I'm doing. And, God wants more than anything for you to be a part of his family. He wants to call you son or daughter. He wants you to be, he just wants you to belong to him in the deepest, realest sense of the word. So if that's something that you're interested in, if that's something that you're seeking, reach out to us at the email, cheeruppodcast@gmail.com. Reach out to us on our websites, and we would be more than happy to talk to you about how you can start your relationship with God too. Next week, we're going to finish up our series, our Love Extravagantly 2022 series about brotherly love, filial love. I hope that you'll come back. I hope that you've enjoyed it so far, and we will talk to you next week. See you then.